Mhm.
Here we are. Is it working?
It is working.
All right, I love it. So, would you like to begin with your mihi, Hana?
Sure. Tēnā koutou katoa, nā mihi nui ki ngā iwi o tēnā rauhe me tēnā. Kia ora collective, Sleepover Club, mō tēnei kōrero.
Great. Okay, well, I'll continue with my introduction. So we're here tonight live from Te Whanganui-a-Tara, Aotearoa. My name is Jordana, and this is Hana.
Hi.
And we're the first artists and digital residents on the first Local Stories project based in Wellington, New Zealand currently. We're speaking to the founders of Sleepover Club, Elise and Miriam, who are in Melbourne, Australia. For the next hour, we'll be discussing queer visibility, safe spaces, and decolonisation on and offline. This project is for both Local Stories' first exhibition titled Cyber Nectar and Sleepover Club's Edition 3 Queering Feminisms project. For all of you who are watching, I love that. That was a very optimistic pitch. I loved it. Feel free to write your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube, and we'll be doing our best to follow along with those as we go along. However, please be mindful, we will not tolerate hateful, racist, homophobic, or sexist language. That's generally just a disclaimer that we like to have with everything associated with Local Stories and Cyber Nectar. And also this video will be recorded. And in case the internet drops out, we apologise in advance if there are any technical difficulties, and we'll be right back with you and with you for the next hour. So hello, welcome Miriam and Elise. Would you like to do an introduction?
Yeah, hello. So first, we're in Melbourne, Australia right now. We just want to begin with acknowledging the Kulin Nation peoples, who are the original custodians of the land that we meet on and conduct our activities. And yes, I'm very excited to be live to it. Hello to all the viewers at home.
Awesome. Oh, well, it's lovely to be here. So I guess the first question that I had posed for you guys, which I just wanted to ask just as a little icebreaker. How many minutes or hours do you spend online looking at a screen per day? And then I'm going to ask you more about Sleepover Club and what it is.
Yeah, cool. Well, I guess the last 3 days I've been online at least 8 hours a day, working on things for edition 3. And then Miriam, what about you?
I feel like I'm always online, even when I'm not.
Even when I'm dreaming.
Yeah, like it's a constant, continuous part of my life, whether or not I'm looking at a screen. Yeah.
I'm always online.
Yeah, it's so true. I feel like that maybe in relation more to, say, Instagram, which is quite, it prevails across all of my life, because even when I'm just looking at things, I'm thinking like, is that the gram though? Is that for the gram? Like, is that photographic enough that I should share it with everyone? Which is a lovely thought, but also my eyes become more like a camera for Instagram than I don't look at things and like, that's nice.
I do that on Tinder. I just spend I'll just end up on there and not even mean to go on there.
Yeah, it's like your brain's wired to go onto it when you pick it up. But it's a nice sentiment of sharing to think like that, Jordana. But it's like the world is Instagram's world and we're all just living under its
I decided to frame it like sharing, obviously, as someone who does a lot of collective work with women online to do with like active cyber feminism. If you don't get like sharing, it's just gonna burn you down. Like if you don't see it in a positive way, or the ways that it can make people feel connected or connect to each other, it can just get a little bit bleak or prevailing.
It can just feel like branding.
Yeah.
Rather than like any kind of like emotional or like bodily connotations to other people and connecting to other people.
I think it's nice to make Instagram emotional, to think like that. you know, that it is emotional and it is like you can be intimate on it and with it. I think that's like probably a key for like what all four of us do with like Local Stories and Sleepover Club as well.
So speaking of Sleepover Club, here we are. So what do you do? Tell me a little bit, if you feel comfortable sort of introducing the project to maybe people who don't know of it or would like to know more of it. Obviously you have an Instagram, you have a Facebook, you have a website I've seen under the Sleepover Club initiative. So you're not hard to find, but I'm just thinking while we have the opportunity, we could.
And it'd be cool to know more about the project that you're working on.
Let's say that again, Hannah.
It'd be great to hear about the project that you're working on at the moment.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the Sleepover Club initiative is a kind of platform space that exists online and offline. It's a space for like continuing conversations about feminisms, all kinds of feminisms, but especially looking always forward and wondering what's new and what people are interested in and what's important to our feminisms. Do things in life like exhibitions and meetings. We have lots of meetings with each other and with other people. We had a conference. We hosted a really amazing opening night that Hana was here for. We had some performers. We do all kinds of things like that, but the space is sort of fluctuating between online and offline constantly.
Yeah, I'd say that we're predominantly online, and with the current edition, which is like the most, I don't know, current project, that's queering feminism. So essentially that's just like a, what would you say? It's like almost like an online publication that features like ex-feminist contributors. I think we've got like 13 this time around.
Is it August 31st, or when does that sort of go online?
5 p.m. tomorrow, which will be 7 p.m. New Zealand time.
Right. And is that working with local artists or international sort of like internet-based people, or who are the people who are contributing to Edition 3 queering?
A combination.
We've got I think 2 writers from Hungary. We've got a couple others from Europe, and then the rest are predominantly Melbourne or Australia based. But we actually had this collective from London called Yeti contribute, and their work was kind of considering queer orientation and like psychogeography and like queer desire lines as a diversion from the straight, and all their work is just Instagram based. So I feel like it fits in really well with conversations that we're going to be having, and with Cyber Nectar as well.
Aye, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I guess from what you were saying just then, like, do you generally do more? You said you do more online than you do offline. Is that because you prefer online as a space to activate what you do, or is it more because it's accessible, or because it can be quite hard to do things offline in life generally, but putting on exhibitions and printing things and these kind of physical manifestations of work can be hard to put on all the time? Why do you use online more is my question.
I think I was going to mention accessibility is a huge thing. I mean, it means that what we're doing is available for everybody that has access to the internet all over the world. It creates more of a community as well with that accessibility, and I think it's like, there's a lot more logistics and labor involved with physical things, and I think over time we've like kind of used the digital aspect of what we do as like the center point that then we bounce ideas of, I don't know, physical projects off that. And we're working on like theorizing a show for next year that kind of thinks about space, but then even more so like digital space. And we were thinking about how that exhibition could run online just as much as it runs, you know, in the real world. Not the real world, that's a terrible thing to say, but like offline as well.
Sort of like we've been thinking about the way that physical, like IRL space interacts with online virtual space and the role that they take in necessitating each other. So when we first started Sleepover Club, when we first started thinking about it and meeting and planning, we initially were speaking about an exhibition, like amazing.
You were speaking.
I know like an exhibition, and then that quickly kind of evolved into a website platform space. And I think out of, you know, because we had limited funds, because we had limited resources, and because we wanted to access a wider community of people, huge. But we're very interested lately in speaking about like what kind of space necessitates the other. Like, does the physical space, the things that we do, necessitate the fact that we have an online space, or is it reversed, you know?
I always think about it. It's a bit of an old school. It's not an old school mentality, but it's like a reference. But sort of scene making in the 80s and 90s for feminists, specifically in the Riot Girl movement in New York City, or any other place. That's just where it's sort of canonized. They did that not because anyone was particularly interested in zines as a form. They just did it out of necessity because there was nowhere for them to show. There was limited representation of female musicians and artists, so they started making zines out of necessity because they were cheap. It was easy-ish enough to make in your bedroom with your friends at night. It's out of necessity a lot of the time, which is why I think a lot of women do go to the internet.
Well, it's intimacy. It's intimacy as well. Like, I always like to think about, you know, when I'm posting things online, like where people are, because quite often when I'm on the internet, I'm like at home, I'm in my bedroom, looking at, you know, like I don't know, and I feel like that's the same with zine making as well. It's like it's a very intimate action of making this thing, and then it's going to be held in the hands of somebody. But like I always like I saw this tweet the other day that I thought was like really nice, where it was talking about how like having Twitter on your phone is like having like a whole bunch of your friends in your pocket on your phone.
Well, you do hold the phone as well in your palm.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, quite close to your face.
And hands are a really intimate part of the body. There's a lot of language that can be expressed through them, and obviously it's like where you touch, where you interact. That's cute. Yeah, well, going on from that, I think like we could keep talking heaps about like
we could go on.
But let's maybe you two can introduce Lokal Stories' most current project, Cyber Nectar, and talk a little bit about that, and in particular like ideas of decolonizing the internet.
Of course. Well, I can do the introduction. So we are Cyber Nectar, which is the first, I guess, part of a project which Sophie Giblin is spearheading as part of Lokal Stories, which is basically it's an initiative that used to be based in the UK, but because Sophie is relocated with her partner to New Zealand, we have the pleasure of being associated with her and having her be really good at funding and applications and giving artists like us a platform to speak. So we came up with Cyber Nectar through
and
Lokal
also connecting
Stories.
with so many different community groups. So we've been doing podcasts, lots of writing through the Salient. They're making like a micro documentary.
Yeah, we're making a micro documentary on our process as Cyber Nectar.
We're doing a DJ set.
We're doing a DJ set. We're taking 2 shop front windows. We're going to do a performative reading. What else? Curating a show. And then and making our own work in response to, I guess it's sort of, Hana and I share similar concerns within our individual artist practice. But Hana also recently moved to Wellington, and we'd worked together, generally collaborating via the online out of necessity because we just weren't in the same city. So this is the first time that we've been based in the same place and able to actually like bring our practices together in quite a succinct way. And it just so happened that Sophie moved in the exact same year and was looking for 2 people exactly like us, which is cool.
She found it. It was a match.
And what did you want to say about the decolonisation of the internet? Well, how do you think this project, if at all, like what would your opinion of it be?
Well, I guess a big part of our work so far has been research, and that's whether that's like talking to different community groups or making podcasts or writing. And I guess I've personally been really interested in the intersection between like the heteropatriarchal neo-colonial society that we have with technology and text. And I guess those were pretty significant things for you. But I think the project does, in that we're actively trying to engage with people who, I guess, like, people who have knowledges that we might not have, and giving them, like, giving different people platforms to speak to their experiences and to like share with us, and sharing that content online through like a network of different people.
And different artists, and I mean, we say it's a collective, which is through Local Stories, Cyber Nectar. So it's like Hana, Jordana, Sophie. But in that way, we have a designer called Sean. We have like a lot of beautiful, intelligent people whose resources we've managed to pull together to actually make something bigger than we can project individually, because our practices, Hana and mine, are both extremely, I don't want to say like politically implicated, but I guess that they are political. So the more people you can have essentially on your team, the further, hence this conversation, the further your message can go. Or sort of, it's a different way of disseminating, where I generally, personally within my own practice, only really disseminate my work online myself or through circuit. But my work generally exists in the contemporary art sphere in a gallery. So you need, if you want to have politically interesting, driven work, you need to look to the community always, because if it just gets stuck in the white cube, your rhetoric is being wasted, basically. I'm sorry, general gallery public goers, but it doesn't have as much effect.
So one nice thing I'm like quite into, we were talking about the other day, so the name of calling the project Cyber Nectar, I guess it came from like a project that I did with Jordana last year that I think is really like informing our general, I think it really informed my practice after we did it. So it was this Google Doc called Silicon Computer Systems in Wet Living Biologies. And it was like really inspired, like it was like huge, like lots of things. So
yes,
but, it was based on these writings by Rory Ascott that was looking at the mixture of like kind of cold language, like technological, computational devices with like these kind of more natural, so like nectar is like a very natural, like, but it was like thinking more about whenever you're online, there's a body, like, and you're talking to someone, I think sometimes you forget that there's a body behind there. Because earlier on in the project, we were looking a lot at like types of cyberbullying and how to create safer spaces online. And I think that was like a question that I had for both of you, was like how like as a collective based primarily online, have you had to navigate any kind of tricky territory in terms of having like maybe abusive people or just any conflict online?
Or like maybe more specifically, you know, and this is just only like this is like a subtext question, like, have you found that the reaction to being openly feminist online has been positive, or has there been any kind of, not backlash, but how do you manage yourselves online, I guess?
I don't think we've ever had any negative feedback because we don't have comments enabled on our website.
But on Facebook and Instagram, we've been okay, but maybe it's because, I don't know, maybe it's because we're still working within a community, like we're visible to a community of people who are interested, who've like sought us out. So perhaps we're still sitting in a niche, because I witness like so many things happening online, especially when looking into other feminists who are practicing online, and it feels like for us to not have had any kind of negativity is almost surprising, I guess. Yeah.
I feel like it could also have something to do with anonymity, because a lot of people that do get backlash online that are like overtly working under like feminist frameworks, queer frameworks, whatever it may be, they usually do it as individuals, but Miriam and I aren't really active. Like, we work under the guise of Sleepover Club, and our names are not attached to very many things. Like, we understand about how anonymity is such a powerful tool for people that engage in cyberbullying and harassment online. So it might be almost like a kind of like that we're using that for our advantage. Like, the little trolleys out there are a bit scared of us because they don't know who we are. Like,
it sounds dumb to say, but there's sort of two things that connect with this. Is one, it makes you look like an institution.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't enjoy generally like fucking with institutions unless they're artists. And the other one is like the practice of women taking up pseudonyms is not that it's, I'm not saying that's a good or bad thing, but it's certainly not new. Like, you know, women who are excellent writers had to go under male pseudonyms just to get their books published.
And themselves,
Common practice is definitely within, not saying those people did that as like a feminist reaction, but it was a reaction to a particular point in time. And sometimes it actually, at this current moment in time, it's not always that safe to voice your views, but also like put your names to them, especially if you think that is going to cause more harm than good to the cause that you're trying to produce, or the effect you're trying to have is positive.
I think I've expected some sort of backlash, or like, because even that, like you said, with the fact that in a way we do seem like an institution, I honestly have expected like artists or people working within the art system to try and do some sort of interventional things with us, even though like that's something that we're interested in, and essentially that's like the space that we exist in. It is more interventionist than anything else. You know, it's like we're trying to create a space for people that aren't widely represented in the white cube space and in that dialogue. So yeah, which is interesting to say, but yeah, I have expected those things, but we haven't had anything before. Get off track as well.
I think it's always sort of think about that. It's less about people sort of having backlash, but more for the idea of like all of us staying safe or feeling safe, because you can only operate online and have, I guess, like not like powerful opinions, but like opinions which are coming from a good, clear space if you yourself feel safe in it.
And I think a lot of we don't want our contributors to be discouraged, and it's really great that we haven't had any negativity towards Sleepover Club initiative as a whole, because it means that we can have not a safe space, but a welcoming space for anybody to contribute to, and we don't censor anything. And we do very little editing as well on people's work, so it's really great to be able to continue that.
So are you working largely with contemporary female artists, or those who choose to identify as such, etc., etc.? Is this sort of your main, not like target audience, but also, is this your main audience? Is this who you're speaking to and including, or I'm just
I don't think we have like a target, although we understand that there might be specific groups of people who are going to be most interested in the name of our platform and what we stand for. So inherently, like a specific group of people might be involved, but we actively try to not target. And perhaps like one of our interests is to create space for those who feel like they have less options for expressing themselves and in less places that they can feel safe and open and have a place to, so, you know, those who have quiet voices is something that we've articulated before.
Yeah, and I think we do like have a lot of women and women identifying people who we've represented in exhibitions and who have work online, but we also have interest from people that aren't necessarily females, you know, they're not necessarily super overt with their feminisms, but their work does, I don't know, what's the word, kind of like come into play with those kind of ideas and
resonate.
Yeah, resonate just with like
what's valuable to the discourse in that way. So yeah, I'm just thinking about inclusive spaces really. I'm just always interested in not like the politics within politics, but I guess like, yeah, the way that people run their spaces is always very interesting. And there's absolutely no right or wrong, especially when it comes to these things. I just find it intense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, definitely, like, a lot of our, I mean, like, we don't do very many, like, we do approach people for our physical exhibitions, but all our editions have been just called out, so it's been open to submission. We very rarely contact people directly. We generally have people contact us, or at least they're more open and allows space for a lot of different people that have a lot of different considerations and experiences and things to share, which is like really important. I mean, and that can only grow from here as well as we go on. Yeah, I think as well, to interject and go back to Cyber Nectar, how long is your residency going for?
It's been,
I think it's been, has it been a month?
2 months?
I don't know. Time flies when you're having fun.
3 months.
It hasn't been 3 months. We've got a prompt and someone's holding up a sign. Yeah, so it's been 3 months and we've got 2 more. September.
One.
And we have 1 more.
Wow.
We're almost entirely through this process. But yeah, so it's a 4-month ongoing project, of which obviously we've already done 3. But I think, so largely it was sort of, we did a research period, which was largely us just sharpening up our tools, thinking about feminism again, sort of, obviously if it's feminism as a lived experience, but sometimes the references you have, they can get a little bit here and there. So
we
it's
did
always,
some writing during that period as well.
Yeah, we had time to really like reflect on what it was in our practice that made us.
We had lots of meetings.
Lots of meetings. Talked to lots. We had a wonderful meeting with Rape Crisis.
The Wellington branch.
Yeah, the Wellington branch Rape Crisis, and talked to some people who are running a community space called BGI in Wellington.
And Sticks and Stones.
Sticks and Stones agency for teens and sort of the awareness of bullying, specifically cyberbullying. So there's a whole lot of just pulling a lot of people in the community who were already doing good work. And speaking to them about how, especially with limited government funding, if not none, that how they continue to operate as a collective that supports vulnerable people in the community, which is what we're sort of in a very abstract sense looking to do. So yeah, that was the research period. We're now currently in the creation period, which is sort of pulling together other artists with similar concerns and curating shows. As we see, we did the list. We don't have to go through it. But the sort of, yeah, looking into making work that actively states the research that we've done and provides examples of that for the general public. And yeah, and then we're going to do the exhibition period, which begins like pretty much now-ish. well, we don't, our exhibition doesn't open until the 28th of September, but, you know, there's a whole process leading up to that, which counts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we do.
So will the exhibition kind of
Made a self-care mantra.
So we just held up another sign. There's our prompt. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. So will this exhibition kind of be a culmination of everything that you've kind of worked on throughout this 4-month period?
No, so we have 2 window spaces that we're taking over. One is Fusion Skate and the other is Emporium. Both are on Cuba Street, which is one of the busiest streets in Wellington. So as far as people seeing it goes, it'll be great. But those will be the spaces more or less where we show the outcome of our research. But this exhibition, I felt that instead of it being, I mean, obviously we're Cyber Nectar, but I want it less to be the Jordana and Hana show, because there's a difference, and feminism is supposed to be inclusive, and it's not so inclusive when you just take up all of the space for yourself. So we're inviting other women with similar concerns to us, or who have been following along with Cyber Nectar as it's been developing. And just, asking them to show us what we've got.
We're curating a show of artists from this, 2 from New Zealand, 2 from Melbourne.
Who do you have from Melbourne?
Catherine Bodden and Sophie Giblin. And
Another prompt. So you talk, I'll read the
okay.
prompt.
And then 2 artists based in London who, so we're curating it now with Sophie. Should be cool. But every week that the show runs, we want to do, like, invite one of the artists who we've had. So we've done a series of podcasts with local artists here, and we're going to approach, like, maybe 3 of those people to come into the space and interject, like, move the space around, change the exhibition. Because I really hate that the hierarchy of there being, like, a curator.
Yeah.
I prefer, like, organizer, because it's like a curator implies, like, power, I guess.
And it's the same what I was saying about the structure of inviting other women. It's not necessarily that I'm like, I own this gallery and you are welcome. It's, you know, like, it's not an olive branch. It's not like, it's more that idea of, like, ladder down. So if you're given an opportunity to do something, you should always have the ladder down for other women to participate if they want to. So that's sort of the structure, because I also have a problem with the...
Yeah, I think that's sort of the reason why Miriam and I curate under Sleepover Club initiative, because it allows us to kind of bridge that
phenomenon.
Idea of power, and then also, like, allow artists to function as curator, I suppose.
Or like curator-artist collaborative relations.
Yes, it's an amalgamation of everybody.
Yeah. I think that the role of the curator sort of evolved via, like, network relations, and because of the internet, to take away from that power of the, like, person who is the connoisseur or the selector, or the one that is offering a olive branch or whatever. Like, I think perhaps instead of curators, more like opening up space to collaborate, if somebody chooses to be like that, of course. But I think, like, there's so much happening all the time. It's very cyclical that it's become more collaborative rather than powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, we always get so nervous emailing artists initially. Like, that's like the most exciting / nerve-wracking thing to do, don't you think? Because you're just so, like, eagerly waiting for a reply
and sharing ideas and asking for them to participate. Yeah,
hoping they're into it.
It's sort of like, I feel like that's what the like new media art or artists who operate online, the online has done to art, sort of like what the internet has done to sort of like curating and art. Like it's sort of taken over all of the fields.
Everyone's a curator now.
It's this, and it's this interesting sort of when the internet gets involved in art. and the internet gets involved in curating, everything becomes more fluid. So it makes and specifically in 2016 being the age we are, I feel it does, there is a lot of fluidity going on, or there's a need for not like less structure, but sort of like less structure within the structure, which is why I enjoy the idea of the paranoia of trying to email an artist and get into touch with them, because that's just another way to communicate, really.
The structure begins to feel stale. Do you think this sentiment of fluidity kind of plays into the ideas that you two share on digital togetherness?
Yeah, no, so true. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot it's gone.
What was your
I had
question?
a thought and it was gone.
I guess what I wanted to say, I wanted to speak specifically about queer visibility online, just for me personally. Only because I mean, I've learned about queer visibility by being queer visibly, on and offline, obviously. But I guess the other place that I learned it was when I was 12 on YouTube. And the representation of queer people is awful. It's atrocious. It's not really getting any better. They released, like, there was the film, it was like Blue is the Warmest Colour. It wasn't online, but it just, I don't know. Anyway, I guess I wanted to talk about how visible are we really, or I guess I just, I want to know where do you go to see queer being visible, or are you that place for people, you know?
Like, even I think we exist in a bubble, and like I'm speaking for me right now, not for Sleepover Club, because obviously this is my experience, but there's queer visibility, and then there's like queer invisibility, and I think online it's great because it allows for this very accessible, like we said before, community of queer people to come together in a space. Like there are online spaces that are not policed, and the queer body is not policed by, non-queers. And there are spaces that are like inclusively queer, and that's wonderful. And I guess like in a way the club is like a massive physical manifestation of that like safe place. But I mean, even saying safe place, safe space, it's never really, like even in queer communities, I think there is still a lack of total inclusivity, and there still does exist a lot of power structures and a lot of hierarchies. And I think with Sleepover Club, identification with feminism, to begin with, we did have a lot of non-queer cisgendered women approach us, and it's only now that it's slowly becoming more inclusive of queer people. Even though I am a queer myself, I think it takes time, because a lot of queer people are unsure as to whether they want to, label themselves as feminist, or not even label, but actually feel like there is a spot in feminism for them, because even with representation of feminism online, it is not very queer inclusive, like in the broader sense. It's not. I think like digital spaces are doing wonderful things for contemporary feminisms, and it allows for us to be constantly like reforming and rechecking, which I think is like something that the both of you did research period for Cyber Nectar. But the majority of feminisms are still very much stuck in the idea of like cisgendered females and what they need, and then there's also these ideas of like white feminism and like the white woman getting to a point where they have what the white man has, but then that leaves like a whole spectrum of people behind.
We could sit here all day, really, pointing out all of the.
I know, like getting a thought through it already.
Feminist discourse, or within the wider topic itself. But I mean,
it's an intimidating space to enter if you don't fit into a certain narrative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's always like you kind of just have to, like, I found myself when being invited into other feminist like projects as well, like sometimes a great experience and sometimes just feeling like my positionality is being used as almost like a social currency. Like I think there's awareness for me at the moment personally of like the social currency and hierarchies within, like, I guess a very specific branch of feminist discourse in New Zealand, which for me like kind of focuses far too much on like American politics.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it does come out of America and Europe, and I think that's another important thing to remember as well for both of us, as in Sleepover Club and Cyber Nectar, but also, you know, Fresh and Fruity, which is like where something you're a part of as well, Hana, and then the two of your individual practices as well. That's like we're not at the point of feminism, and we don't have even like confidence in understanding and knowing what it is that we need to provide people. Like, we're still constantly learning and there is no end point. Like, I don't think we're trying to get the key and then after everything is like, everything is solved.
It's this very common thing for me, going back to the idea, I guess the idea of my feminism maybe being rooted more in the idea of fluidity, is this idea of like, it sounds real dumb when you talk about it, but it's like destabilizing a hierarchy which is like based on competition. Because I have a lot of that where it's extremely, for me anyway, I'm always very business minded, quite analytical about it, and the idea that contemporary art in and of itself is a business. It's based on business models, you know, and we know how well women have been treated in business. So for me, I guess it's destabilizing the idea that women are inherently like competition to one another, because of course you don't feel safe in a space or welcome in a feminist space if it's about the sort of placing a hierarchy on who's the most queer or who's the most indifferent in a social situation, therefore you win. You know, the autonomy of it is quite a lot.
And I think it can often become this place that's very toxic when fundamentally we share the same views, but based on our different experiences is how we relate to the world. So we're not always going to agree, but there needs to, for me anyway, like I feel like there needs to be this real push towards having critical discussions that are constructive and that help us to learn and understand our, you know, our positionality. Because I was talking to a friend the other day actually, and they were saying that like, no, like no one is born a feminist. And I actually disagreed, because I personally feel like growing up and like when I was growing up, I was always aware of the fact that I was Māori, and the fact of my family maybe like came from like a working class background, and I was always kind of had this like awareness of race and class, and also of like the emotional and domestic labor that were performed by women, by my mother. Like I had this awareness of it. I think that feminism is just it's a privilege as well to have like the feminist language that we have, but being able to have that language to articulate your experiences is what feminism is.
I think it's important to remember as well that like overt queerness and overt feminism is a privilege as well. Like not everybody is privileged with the support to kind of be overtly themselves. As like cliche as that sounds, it's so true. And I suppose like feminism is about destructuring, de-learning, learning.
It kind of goes back to what I was saying, I guess, about, or the topic we began with, which was queer visibility. There's nothing worse than being like invisibly queer, like even within your circles, or you don't quite fit the structure which is placed on you, which tells you how to be, even as someone who's quote unquote able to be themselves. You still get placed within a certain mold, and then if you don't fit into that mold, you either get placed in another one or completely exiled within the queer community anyway, and sometimes often within the feminist community also.
Well, there is still a structure within the queer community, but I guess like queerness is a diversion from structure in a way. You know, it's like it's a wavy, curvy line as opposed to a straight line. If you think about it as an orientation, but still there's still so much unlearning to go, because there is a lot of structure and a lot of hierarchy within queerness. And queer invisibility, I think, is like a topic that is like super interesting.
Yeah. I think more to come on that topic. Just I think me personally, having to like look more into it, look at the people around me and sort of think about it. It's just fascinating as much as it is damaging in the long term. But yeah, very cool. I'm just gonna get my notes back up.
Yeah, because I feel like this real, like I almost like struggle. It was only like I think like beginning of last year that I was even able to kind of like proclaim my queerness. As though it's like always been sort of repressed by me entering into these kind of heterosexual relationships where I have this duality that is repressed in some way. And I always feel like it's like this pressure on me as well. I guess it's like a femme queer woman as well. And yeah, it was like comes back to that conversation we had the other day about the representation of like bisexuality in film.
It's like not queer enough to be queer, not straight enough to be straight.
But always dangerous.
But so very dangerous. I was talking about the problem, the problem I have with the representation of bisexual women, specifically in like large scale cinema. If ever a queer woman is represented, they're always like they're either like very dangerous or probably they die somewhere in the middle of the film, just so everyone knows that moralistically
you die.
They always play bisexual women, are always called out as they're always the femme fatale. They're always like, of course she's bisexual because she's just so attractive, but that's not. And they're always based on sex, but everyone forgets that bisexuality and a lot of queerness isn't actually, it's not really about sex. It's a lot more to do with attraction. And reason, but it's because they're a woman as well. They're just sexualize it. So that was a small snippet of a tirade I had another time. So we won't go. But it's a very interesting topic.
Because I guess as a bisexual person, you're existing between who you are within yourself, but then what other people say of you in representation. So it is very different. Yeah, of course.
It's just that difference between sort of. I think I'm a strong believer to do with the idea that like if someone says something genuinely, I'll just believe them. Especially when it comes to the idea of bisexuality is that it has to be followed through with some kind of action to be legitimized. But the who identify actively as straight may be attracted to someone who happens to identify as queer and put that into action. But it doesn't necessarily then make that person gay. So
just like if you're a queer person that enters into a heterosexual relationship, it doesn't erase your queerness either.
It doesn't.
No. Yeah, I know there needs to be more understanding of self-determination and agency, I think, within sexuality. Anyway, before we all get red-faced with anger.
Yeah.
We have the last 10 minutes.
Do we get any questions?
I'm going to pour some wine in celebration.
Yes.
Also, I have this thing that I do because I know we have 10 minutes left, but it's a thing I do. Yes. on our podcast channel. It's called 10 Fun Questions. Where this is what I was saying. We're going to be Alan Carr, chatty man. But so we ask people 10 fun questions, and then you just answer them as honestly as you can. They're not hard, but also I might not be able to think of 10, so we're just going to do.
Can I interject with a question in that case?
As many questions as we can, if you'd like to do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, you can have the first. Were you saying you want to have a question?
Yeah.
Do you want to just ask them a question?
Sure. What's your star sign?
Gemini.
Libra with a Scorpio rising.
Yes. Do you believe in astrology, or is it at least interesting to you?
I believe in astrology.
Perfect. So I'm
My star sign is used for everything. Star signs are like for bad behaviour.
That who was what? Someone was a Gemini.
Yeah.
Miriam, Gemini.
I am.
And you were
a Libra, but with a Scorpio rising.
What are you?
Okay, so I'm a Gemini Cancer.
Yeah.
My rising sign is Pisces, and my moon is in Gemini.
So I'm a Sun in Aries, Moon in Pisces, Gemini rising.
Oh,
Gemini.
I have a moon in Pisces.
What was that? Sorry?
I have a moon in Pisces as well.
Yes, go off. Isn't it wild? Everyone who doesn't do this is just going to be like,
what?
Okay. Everyone who sees this, just go online, find out where you were born, find out the time you were born, and look up your natal chart. You will learn so much about yourself. And it's only
Mercury's in retrograde, so it would be nice. You should look into that.
Yeah,
technology's not going to work for the next month, and you're
going to
maybe have a weird time.
If nothing else, your natal chart will teach you to reflect upon yourself in a healthy, considered way. And if everyone understood themselves better, the world would be a better place. So just do that. Great signs. So cowboys or astronauts? Choice.
Oh gosh. Cow people?
Yeah?
Yeah,
cow
people. Wild Wild West.
Yeah, and I don't like space travel. I think it's greedy.
It's really unsustainable.
Yeah.
Yes. That's so good. Yeah, no, I think it's astronauts are just terrifying.
Because what have we really got other than Teflon?
Yeah.
I think going to space and spend a long time all alone, years all alone, floating up there. I don't know.
The guy he recently got back from traveling in space, and apparently I don't know how to describe this any better. I'm so sorry, Guardian. I know you did a great cover of the story, but apparently his body just shriveled. He just couldn't do anything because he'd been out of the atmosphere for so long.
No muscle.
Yeah.
But cow people, on the other hand, can do just about anything.
Maybe I should have said what's the film? It's George Clooney and Sandra Bullock as astronauts, as opposed to
Gravity.
Yeah, that was sort of the idea, the cinematic version of an astronaut, not the reality of putting somebody in an isolated chamber for a year with no oxygen.
And dehydrated food.
Okay, so this is a big question. It's almost 5 in 1, but everyone tends to get a lot out of it. So if you could be anyone for one day, who would you be, why, and what would you do?
Go on.
What? I don't know.
I don't know what you're about the shoulders of before. I don't know. So who, why, what?
Yeah.
I thought about Kanye.
I thought about Rihanna.
So Rihanna, then I thought Rihanna, yeah. Especially after last night's performance.
Oh, yeah.
Rihanna.
I love it.
We both,
Okay.
and what would we do?
Yeah, so who would you be? Why? So why would you be Rihanna?
So we'd collectively be Rihanna. We definitely like
Rihanna, yes.
wear like amazing Goodbye creations and
Yes.
blaze all day.
Yeah, this answer isn't.
We'd also perform her newest album from like start to finish.
Yeah.
I feel like what it would to have that voice.
Yeah, just to ourselves though, like just in the mirror, just so we could look at ourselves singing like Rihanna back to us. Yeah.
This is like a gluttonous answer. Like this is if anybody wanted something really political and like uplifting, you're not gonna get it.
For my answer in a podcast, I said I would be Patti Smith and I would find myself, so find Jordana and make out with Jordana as Patti Smith. So it's not, I'm not looking for, it can be as gluttonous as possible. Favorite day of the week?
Thursday.
Yeah. I like Sundays a lot.
Yeah, me too. I like Tuesday. I don't know, no particular reason. It just seems like a great day. Do you have a favorite day?
Sunday.
Yeah, Sundays are good too.
Sundays are good.
Okay, and we'll finish off on this one and then we'll have to head off because we've got about 3 or so more minutes left. But who's your favorite author or playwright or artist or musician at the moment? And do you have just anything that you're reading or looking at that you think anyone else might enjoy to see? You don't have to, but
Gosh, I don't know. Anything so bad
at the moment, I just read Maggie Nelson's book, The Argonauts. I'd recommend that. It's great because there's a lot of inclusion of like other really amazing feminist theorists, and it talks a lot about, you know, queer theory and like the queer family system and things like that. So it's like kind of like 100 books in one. So that's what I'm doing.
100 books. I'm reading an amazing book. The title, I'm just looking it up because I can't remember, but it's Hans Ulrich Obrist, and he's and somebody else. It's like the age of earthquakes, and basically they're positing that because of the internet, the entire structure of everything we experience has changed, including time, and that time literally is faster than it used to be because of network relations, and they're like developing a vocabulary for us to exist within, and it's amazing. It's like it's about the present. It's about the present moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard really good things about that book. I've seen it being sold like hotcakes at my work, which is really nice.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good book.
The Age of Earthquakes, is that what it's called?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
I think so.
A guide to the extreme present. Yeah.
2 minutes. Did you guys have any final questions for us before we head off? It's okay if you don't. I just thought I'd throw it over to you guys.
What did you guys have for dinner?
We had lasagna, and it was really, really nice.
Sophie made us lasagna.
Sophie's a feeder, which is the nicest thing in the world.
It's always like pasta and meat. It's great.
It's exactly what I want, carbs and meat. But yeah, we had lasagna for dinner and wine. It's not really dinner, but I mean it's worth
and
dinner.
it was an accompaniment.
Exactly.
Thanks so much for speaking with us. We'd love to do it again. I think we could talk for a lot longer.
Yeah, tune in to episode for a debrief of natal charts.
Awesome. Well, great speaking with you guys, and we'll catch you again soon. All right. Have fun, and congratulations on everything that you're doing with the Sleepover Club. It looks astounding.
And we can't wait to read it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you so much for your time.
Keep it up. See ya.
Bye.